I work at one of those massive corporations where your ID card feels more like a leash than a pass. I've been here for nearly 6 years, grinding through endless meetings, reports that no one reads, and the kind of office small talk that feels like a substitute for actual human connection. My girlfriend, let's call her Lisa. She's great, supportive, smart, reliable. We've been together for 4 years, and on paper, everything is perfect. But lately, perfection feels suffocating, predictable. Then she showed up, Julia, new in my department, bright, funny, sharp in ways that made me pay attention the moment she walked past my desk. The way she laughed at a bad joke from a senior exec, the way she noticed details no one else did, she was different. And somehow, I knew that noticing her was the beginning of a line I shouldn't cross.
At first, it was innocent. Shared coffee breaks, quick chats about the TPS reports no one cared about, subtle jokes that only we seemed to get. But slowly, our conversations started to drift. I learned about her weekend hikes, her obsession with true crime podcasts, the way she argued about movies with a passion I hadn't realized I craved. I found myself looking forward to those small encounters more than anything else in the day. There was a spark in her eyes when she laughed at something only I understood, and I, against every ounce of rational thought, felt it too. The kind of electricity that makes your chest tighten, your mind race, the warning bells in your head screaming, "Don't go there." Yet every message ping, every casual touch on the arm during a presentation, pulled me closer. Sympathy had become fascination, fascination into craving.
It happened on a Friday evening, long after most people had left the office. We were staying late to finish a project, an excuse that felt flimsy even to me. The fluorescent lights made everything too stark, too real, and yet when she laughed at something I said, it felt like the room shrank to just the two of us. One thing led to another. A hand brushed against mine as we reached for the same file. A glance lingered a second too long, and then we kissed. I can't describe the euphoria and guilt simultaneously. They were tangled up like a storm in my chest. Part of me thrilled at the thrill, the intimacy, the forbidden nature of it. The other part of me recoiled in horror, thinking of Lisa, thinking of the vows we hadn't formally made but morally upheld, thinking of the career and reputation that could crumble if anyone knew. That night I drove home, hands gripping the wheel, heart hammering, replaying every detail in a loop. The line had been crossed. There was no going back. After that night, everything became a careful dance. During the day, I was the same diligent employee, the same attentive boyfriend. No one would have guessed that under the surface, my mind was constantly calculating meetings, messages, excuses. I learned to smile at Lisa, while my phone vibrated with a message from Julia. I learned to laugh at office jokes while my chest tightened, remembering a fleeting touch or a secret glance. Every lunch break became a potential risk. Every late-night text from Julia, a thrill and a panic at once. I told myself I was careful, that no one would notice. But maintaining two worlds, the polished, responsible me, and the reckless, feverish me, was exhausting. I became a master of subtlety, of half-truths and convenient lies. And yet, with Julia, it felt like freedom, like the chains of normalcy had loosened for a few stolen hours. It started small. A glance that lingered a second too long from a coworker, a raised eyebrow from Lisa when I returned from a late meeting, a question in passing about why I seemed distracted lately. I brushed them off, convincing myself I was overthinking. But the nagging doubt grew. Julia became more cautious, more secretive, and I noticed my own habits shifting, checking my phone before leaving the office, deleting messages, avoiding certain colleagues. The tension was invisible to everyone else, but inside me it was suffocating. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt, and every time it didn't, a tiny relief spread through me. I knew I was playing with fire, and yet, I couldn't stop. The thrill of secrecy, the stolen moments with Julia, They had become an addiction I didn't want to fight. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I was running late to a project meeting, my mind buzzing with texts from Julia, when I almost ran into Lisa in the office lobby. She wasn't supposed to be there. She said she had a doctor's appointment. Her eyes searched mine, sharp, questioning. I felt my stomach twist. Then, as if fate wasn't finished, Julia appeared at the same moment, coming from the elevator. Our eyes met for a split second, the kind that could unravel everything. I froze. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain Lisa could hear it. We all exchanged polite greetings, and for a few seconds, the world felt unbearably small. One wrong word, one glance, and everything I'd hidden would explode. I excused myself to the meeting, leaving both of them behind, feeling like I had just walked a tightrope over a pit of fire. That night I sat alone in my apartment, the weight of the near discovery pressing on me. Lisa was asleep, peaceful and trusting, and Julia's last message still blinked on my phone, teasing, daring, impossible to resist. I thought about confessing, about tearing everything open and facing the fallout. But the truth terrified me more than the lie. The thought of losing Lisa, losing Julia, losing my job, losing control, it was unbearable. So I made the choice I'd been leaning toward from the start. I would keep the secret. I would continue the double life, carefully, meticulously, praying that no one ever noticed the cracks. The thrill and the guilt would coexist, and I would carry them both, like an invisible scar. After deciding to keep the secret, the affair intensified. Every stolen lunch, every late-night text, every quick touch in the hallway became an electric pulse I couldn't resist. I learned to compartmentalize with frightening precision, smiling at Lisa, nodding in meetings, pretending my mind wasn't elsewhere. Julia and I began planning more deliberate encounters, weekend trips under the guise of work, errands that conveniently overlapped. Each time, my heart raced with the thrill of secrecy, and each time, the fear gnawed at me that someone would notice, that my carefully built facade would crumble. It became a game of balance, adrenaline and guilt entwined so tightly that I barely recognized the person I had become. And yet, despite the danger, part of me couldn't stop chasing that high, the impossible, intoxicating mix of desire and dread. The first real warning signs appeared in subtle, almost invisible ways. Lisa started asking offhand questions. "Who were you texting just now? You seemed distracted tonight." I dodged, deflected, laughed it off, but her tone carried something sharper than curiosity, suspicion. At work, colleagues began making little remarks, innocuous on the surface, but pointed underneath. A lingering glance in the elevator, a pause before a greeting, the faint whispers near the break room. My careful mask was starting to show tiny cracks. Every interaction now felt like a potential trap. I noticed my pulse quicken whenever my phone buzzed. Every decision, every word had to be calculated. The thrill remained, yes, but it was now tinged with a gnawing anxiety that my entire double life could unravel in a single misstep. It happened on a Thursday. Julia and I had arranged a quick lunch at a cafe near the office, a 30-minute escape from the fluorescent prison of our jobs. I was halfway through a bite when I looked up and saw Lisa walking toward the cafe, phone in hand, a confused frown on her face. Panic shot through me. I grabbed Julia's hand under the table, muttered some nonsense about a last-minute work call, and we bolted separately through different exits. My heart was hammering, and I could barely breathe as I ducked into a side street, watching Lisa glance around before continuing on. For a moment, I thought it was over. I thought the entire facade had cracked. But somehow, we had evaded discovery. My chest ached from both relief and fear, and I realized just how close we had come to being exposed, how precarious everything really was. After that near miss, the guilt settled like a stone in my chest. Every conversation with Lisa felt heavier, every laugh more forced. I started noticing how my mind constantly raced, scanning for risks, imagining scenarios where the truth exploded in my face. Even with Julia, The thrill had dimmed, replaced by a nervous tension. Our stolen moments were tainted by fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being caught, fear of hurting everyone I claimed to care about. The double life was no longer just exciting, it was exhausting. I realized I was carrying the weight of every lie, every omission, every fleeting touch that should never have happened. And the more I carried it, the less I recognized the person I had become. It happened unexpectedly. Lisa had picked up on a subtle change in my routine, a late-night text, a hastily cancelled plan, and finally pressed me. "Are you hiding something from me?" she asked, her voice low, trembling with a mix of hurt and suspicion. My throat went dry. I stumbled over words, offered half-truths, deflections, anything to keep the truth buried. But I could see it in her eyes. She was starting to connect the dots. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Every heartbeat screamed that my secret life was on the brink of exposure. For the first time, I truly felt the enormity of what I had done. The thrill of forbidden love was gone, replaced by a sharp, gnawing fear that my carefully constructed world could collapse at any moment. That night I sat alone, staring at my phone. Julia's last message glowed innocently, but to me it was a ticking time bomb. I realized that I could no longer keep up the charade without destroying everything I truly care about, or losing myself completely. For hours, I weighed the choices, keep the secret, and continue living on the edge, savoring stolen thrills, but risking permanent heartbreak, or confess, accept the fallout, and try to salvage what remained of honesty and integrity. In the end, I made a choice, not out of bravery, but out of exhaustion. I would confess, not just to Lisa, but to myself. The double life had become unbearable, and the cost of silence was too high. I knew there would be pain, possibly irreparable damage, but the alternative, living as a fraud forever, felt worse. I waited for a quiet evening. Liza was on the couch, reading, and I could feel the weight of every lie pressing down on me. I took a deep breath and started, my voice trembling. "Lisa, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've done. Something I shouldn't have." I told her everything. The messages, the lunches, the stolen kisses, the thrill, and the guilt. Her face shifted through shock, hurt, disbelief. The silence that followed was crushing. Tears welled in her eyes, and I felt like I had physically shattered the world we had built together. There were no words that could undo it. I could only wait and see if forgiveness, or at least understanding, was possible. In that moment, I realized that secrecy may have given me excitement, but honesty, painful as it was the only path back to being human again. Weeks have passed since I confessed, and the world hasn't ended, but it hasn't gone back to the way it was either. Lisa is distant, cautious, and I can't blame her. Trust, once broken, is fragile and slow to mend. Julia and I no longer meet. The euphoria of secrecy is gone, replaced by the hollow ache of loss and regret. I think about the choices I made, the thrill of forbidden love, and the lies I told. Part of me wonders if it was worth it. The rush, the connection, the escape from monotony. But the truth is clear. Nothing was worth the anxiety, the heartbreak, the constant fear of being discovered. The lesson is brutal, but real. I carry the memory of those stolen moments like scars, reminders of what I desired, what I risked, and what I lost. And maybe, in the end, that's all I can do. To live with the consequences, and try, painstakingly, to rebuild what I broke.